Today I am going to be going over the new Hha Tetra Rise X3. Things that I think really make this sight stand out and why this sight is on my bow. All right, you guys have been watching the channel for a while. You know that I have shot an HHA sight for a very long time. All the way back here, when I started the channel, I had this Hoyt RX4 Ultra, and this has the original Kingpin on it. I've just been shooting HHA sights. I believe in the company. I believe in Chris. I believe in the whole HHA family. Everyone that works there, they make a really, really good quality sight. It's American made. I've been to the factory. I know how they're making them. It's just, they make really good products made by really good people. A lot of the guys and girls that are there hunt. They understand how important the sight is for us, and they understand the workmanship and quality that goes into building a really good sight. And that's why, you know, forever, I've really had them on my bow. Once you get into the dovetail version here, like they've had the Tetra, or they had the Kingpin, then they went to the Tetra Max, and then they had the Rise, and now they have the Rise X3. So that is really a blend. The Rise X3 is really a blend of like the HHA Tetra and the Rise. They took a lot of the good features from both of those and finally put them together. And they have added some really new cool features to this sight to make it really customizable. All right, so let's start with the mounting bracket onto the bow. This is just your normal bracket that HHA has had for a little while now. You have the option of running the set screw in here, which is what I was running. So I could get this Picatinny rail on there for the Mantis, or I can attach my quiver here. But they also come with a quick turn knob if you're not going to run a quiver. You can just use this. You can take your sight on and off the bow. Pretty easy, but I find coming towards hunting season, I like just having this little set screw in there. Makes it really simple. I'm typically not taking my sight off my bow except to travel, but the off instances that I am, having an Allen pack just to take that out, not a big deal. All right, let's go over some basic features on this sight, some things that have not changed from the Tetra Max. As you can see, it is still the same sight rail, so the same dovetail, same third axis adjustment, nothing's changed here. And honestly, not much has changed with the function of the sight. They still have the infinite adjust rail on the front, so once you find, I run my wheel and the scope rail all the way up. I'll tighten it down, and then I will actually sight in by moving the whole sight adjustment and get my macro. Once I find that, you can just tighten it down, and it's not going anywhere on the rail. You have actually two screws to tighten it down, not just the one that I did here. Coming to the windage and second axis adjustment, again, not much has changed here. It's the same front rail mount on here. And depending on, like, I had this in my Matthews bridge lock, so I had the little bracket for the extra windage on the knob flipped on the outside. Right now with my Ethos, and it's mounted on the outside of the bow, I have that flipped back to the inside. So just depends on what you're running here, but the actual second axis adjustment and how you adjust the windage left and right has not changed. It's just a loosen up of the set screw here, and then you can macro adjust your sight left or right. There are little detents in the back here. You can actually hear them and feel them click into place when you're moving it. Once you have found the macro adjustment to be where you want it, you just snug this up a little bit, not super tight, just a little bit, and now you can use your micro. And this little turn knob on the outside, same thing. Not much has changed here on this design. And honestly, I don't think they really needed to change anything. Tighten it down, and once it's tight, it's not going anywhere. So again, this is a really solid sight. I didn't think they needed to change much going from like the Tetra Max. A lot of the same stuff on this is also on the Rise, but there are some things that they did change for this new Rise X3 that I think they really needed to do and make adjustments on it. Second axis adjustment, loosen the top one, loosen the bottom, and you can adjust your second axis this way. And like I said, third axis has not changed. But what has changed on this sight? That's what you guys want to know, right? So the scope housing, as this comes, you had the option of getting different scopes for the Tetra Max, and this is the 2-inch scope housing, and this one on here on the Rise X3 is an inch and 5/8. So I like having the little bit smaller if you're someone who wants to shoot really long distances, shoot total archery challenges, or really want to have that maximum range on your bow, or maybe you're shooting a little bit of a slower setup, having a little bit of a smaller scope housing is going to get you a little bit more vane clearance on the bottom. Now, getting that, you might, you're going to close off a light a little bit here, but HHA does a good job. I've never felt like these sights were too dark. You can always add the little light kit on the top here, but the thing that they have that HHA has had forever is the manual adjustment rheostat on the outside. So you can open this and close this and bring in more light or less light into these fibers to ultimately glow your pins out. You guys noticed I've never actually shot the Rise. I went straight from this Tetra Max down here to this Rise X3, and part of the reason was because I've always shot a vertical pin or a horizontal pin. So I've never really been one to shoot a single post up pin. Occasionally I have, but it has not been my go-to sight. So I like shooting horizontal pins, and now when I'm shooting horizontal pins, as I'm adjusting these pins in the scope housing, the Rise itself, originally you had the single indicator, unlike the Tetra Max and pretty much every HHA sight forever, you had the single indicator for your single pin. Well, once you start shooting multiple pins, and if my sight tape is different than your sight tape, let's say I have this set to 20 and I'm shooting a 2-dot vertical pin, well, that second dot, it can change for everybody. And HHA for the while on the Rise had the fixed mount, so it's 2, and those 2 pins were exactly the same pin gapping as the 2 pins in your housing. Well, that's good, but when you're shooting a horizontal pins like this, I'm actually moving these pins up and down. So I have a 20, 30, 40, and then I will slide after 40. But until 40, it was kind of tough because I never had the option to adjust my pins. Now, this is one of the biggest things that they did to this sight to improve on it, was now you have 3 individual adjustable pin indicators, so you can adjust them up and down and pretty much make them exactly where you want depending on what your sight tape is. So having the ability to adjust your sight indicator pins on the sight is a big improvement, which is something they needed to do for the last couple of years. A lot of other sights on the market have adjustable pins, and now that you can do it, I think that is a huge improvement. Big change that they also have made, and they incorporated this from the Tetra Max, which originally came from the Kingpin and some of their other sights, is now on the Rise originally. The sight wheel was fixed. You had this little like ribbed sight wheel all the way around, and you could not make adjustments. So for me, if I want to make small fine-tune adjustments, and then let's say after, I don't know, a little bit of time, I get string stretch, or I'm just, maybe I sighted in just a little high and I want to move my sight a little bit. Before, you were just kind of SOL, like this wheel was affixed to the sight. You couldn't change it. You couldn't really make the micro 1-yard increments to your entire sight tape without peeling the sticker off and having to put it back on. So what they have actually done with these is incorporated the same system that they had in their Tetra Max line and the Tetra sights, and it actually has a removable sight wheel. So if you're someone who shoots different sights or different arrow setups, you can actually change your sight wheel, slap another sight wheel on. For example, this is going to be the setup wheel that is going to come with either one of these sights. You can use this, do the whole thing, get it sighted in. Let's say you put your 0 at 20 and you go up to in your 60s, 55. You go grab 55 sight tape, you put it on another wheel, and then you just simply slap this one on at 60 and you're good to go. Now let's say over time you realize that some of the longer distances, let's say you're a yard off either way, or you went to a total archery challenge and you get up to the range and your sight is just a yard, yard and a half off, you can just loosen the set screw, make that small 1-yard adjustment, tighten it back down, and then your sight tape hasn't changed because the actual arc of the arrow is not going to change on your sight, but now you have accounted for the little bit of elevation or maybe the little bit of inaccuracies you had while you were sighting it in. So the fact that they integrated that model into this Rise X3, this is one of the big things. These are really the 2 major improvements that they have made to this sight. Having removable sight wheels and having individual pin indicators that I can adjust to my individual setup, that's huge. Now talking about the sight tapes, HHA, when you get your Rise X3, it's going to come with a sight, an extra sight wheel, a bag of setup tapes, and your little adjustment knob for your mount, as including your mount. But the sight tapes forever, and a lot of manufacturers, they only go out to 100 yards. What HHA has actually done with the Hha Tetra sight tapes is they will go out to 150, depending on your setup. I think there's even some in here that go out to 160, but it's all dependent on the speed of your bow. So actually, the farthest they'll go is 185. That is really stretching it out there. That is going to be a screaming fast arrow. That sight tape is super tight, but they have the options for you. So even if you're shooting something super slow, you have sight tapes that are going to accommodate the arrows that you are shooting. But they come in the package, comes with the setup instructions, comes with the sight tape setups, blanks, so you can put them in, and then it has these little pieces of tape marks, these little pieces of clear tape. I thought I had one out. Yep, I do. And you can actually put those over the seam of your sight tape right here, so that way it doesn't peel up. These sight tapes are all waterproof too. When you get them wet, they're not going to spudge and they're not going to run. So HHA has really thought of a lot of really cool stuff, and they've always done a really good job in the market of building really high quality sights that they stand behind. Everything they have is warranted. They make a really good product. It's American made right here in the US, up in Wisconsin. So HHA Tetra Rise X3, I think is a really good sight. And if you are somebody who likes shooting, maybe let's say a UV scope, something different on the front of it, HHA has a bracket where you can remove this entire housing and you can slide this bracket on the front and you can put whatever scope you want on the front. So if you want to run an UltraView scope on there, they offer that. They have that option for you, and everything here is ready to go. When they run those scopes, they have these nice little turn knobs here, so it's toolless adjustment. The only reason why they don't have a toolless adjustment on this specific scope is because it runs into the block where you have your adjustments for your pins. Otherwise, I think if they could find a way to go toolless on this sight rail or windage adjustment rail, this would be the ultimate setup. But for now, this is how it is. I think they made a lot of improvements by having individual pin indicators and having removable sight wheels, a little bit of a smaller housing. And let's say you're someone who doesn't want to shoot a smaller housing. You can always take a housing off of another HHA sight as long as it has the same infinite rail adjuster in the front and slap it on here, because again, nothing has changed with the rail. So if you want to run a 2-inch scope housing, you can. Thanks for watching this video. We'll catch you on another video.